The morning began with a rub-down of tired muscles which have already pushed bikes along 1,200 kilometres of bitumen for leukaemia research. Leukaemia kills almost 2,000 Australians each year. The money raised will be spent directly on bone marrow transplant technology to fight the disease. The team of riders includes a transplant recipient, 26-year-old Andrew Whedon, who is also facing the journey with 2 artificial hips. Supported with a bus loaded with supplies, the team will make 20 stopovers before they get to Melbourne. After final checkups and fine-tuning, the riders headed off at a steady pace, and with police and community support, they expect to finish the trip by Saturday, December 16. Units from Lake Macquarie were called in when the fire, which had been burning for days on the western side of the Pacific Highway, skipped the road near the Big T Roadhouse. Traffic was stopped for hours as the blaze ran out of control into the state recreation area. Fearing the worst, police immediately evacuated picnickers from the popular weekend tourist spot. Some people were forced to shelter on the beach rather than risk an escape back to the Pacific Highway. Fanned by a northwesterly wind gusting up to 30 kilometres an hour, the fire grew in strength, leaving firefighters in a hopeless position. Tonight, relief workers have been called in to replace exhausted crews. The fire is still burning, and at this stage, experts can only predict further problems. Peter Ryan, NBN News. The Tuggerah Lakes Mardi Gras is in its 36th year, transforming the usually quiet streets of the entrance into a carnival. 75 floats paraded, competing in 7 different categories, from the most comical to the most original. Hundreds of people came out with the hot summer weather to follow the fun and the colour of the celebrations. Ping pong drops, celebrity hovercraft races and fish throwing competitions are all on the program, but this light-hearted fun underlies a more serious objective. Mardi Gras is designed to promote tourism on the Central Coast, and organisers are hoping tens of thousands of visitors will be making a return trip to the area.
John Farnham arrived 2 days before his concert at the International Sports Ground at Broadmeadow. Tomorrow he'll be recording some promotional clips for the American market. All morning things had been going according to plan. The plane arrived on time, 12 minutes past 11. A lucky fan had been invited onto the tarmac, but not invited were about 150 extra fans. John Farnham kept up a brave smile as he tried to get through the crowd, which blocked him a number of times. But after a few minutes, he wanted to know how the fans discovered his secret arrival. A local radio station is believed to have leaked his arrival time. An angry tour manager refused all interviews for the rest of the day, saying John Farnham was tired, having performed just the night before at Bundaberg, and that he needed to sleep. He also added, referring to the crowd, that this was the last thing they wanted. John Farnham and his entourage then left for their hotel. Meanwhile, at Broadmeadow, the big top was being set up. It'll be ready just hours before his concert on Tuesday night. 11 years ago, the first Christmas fair was set up when a handful of shops opened to give locals an extra Christmas shopping day. Today, more than 140 stalls of handicrafts, flowers, fashion and gift ideas attracted crowds as early as 8:30 this morning, hours before opening time at midday. The fair wouldn't have been complete without a visit from this special gentleman and a chance to whisper some secret desires. Others provided some early Christmas cheer. Surplus funds from the fair will go towards a local toy appeal for underprivileged children.
The quickest under-21 bowlers in New South Wales lined up for the state final of the pace bowling competition. Gestetner has put $450,000 into a national scheme over 3 years to develop cricket, and a search for quickies is of high importance. Just warming up, the boys meant business. On the line, a chance to represent your state in the national final and a chance at a $10,000 scholarship to the Academy of Cricket in Adelaide. Jeff Cook from the Newcastle University Club held one down at 117 kilometres an hour, but he was slow compared to the place getters. Tim Fraser from the Penrith Club let one fly, and the radar picked him up at 123 kilometres an hour. Up came Warwick Adlam from Gordon in Sydney and unleashed a rocket at 125 k's. But Mr Speed himself was Ron Davis from the Fairfield Club, who thundered his fourth delivery down the 22 yards at a very quick 131 kilometres an hour. Max Peed made the presentation to Ron Davis, and he now goes on to represent his state at the big final in February.
Not many golf matches start with bubbly, but the Belmont Club's Charity Golf Day isn't your everyday tournament. The voluntary handicap is only one unusual feature of the event, which last year raised $17,000 for charity. Organisers were so pleased with that result they made it annual, this year hoping to raise a similar amount for the National Heart Foundation. The money comes from green fees and a celebrity auction and dinner. More than 100 golfers of all levels put their buggies behind the cause, among them some names better known for success on other sporting fields. Craig Johnson had no trouble finding the back of the net, but is obviously no stranger to a golf ball. Any celebrity day, however, must have its big draw card. Today that was Sir Garfield Sobers, one of the world's all-time great cricketers. Sir Garfield captained the West Indies for many of his Test match years until he retired in 1974, receiving a knighthood for his contributions to the game. Now living in Barbados, Sir Garfield is in Australia to coach a Sydney club for several months. Not surprisingly, the ex-cricketer is a very good golfer, playing off 5. However, the man who took so many fast bowlers apart admits a healthy respect for his second sport.
You work a lot harder at golf than you work at cricket, because in cricket you've got to move in ball and you can deflect it. In golf you've got a still ball, you have to hit it, and you've got to hit it in a certain direction. And you find, although you've played other sports and you have the coordination, golf is not a natural game, because where you have to twist your body into certain positions and then get them back into the same position to release the club to hit the ball properly takes a lot of practice, and I think that I did practice quite a lot, probably even more at golf than I did at cricket.
The first residents of Baddo Bay knew of the storm was the splitting of tree trunks outside their houses. The gale force winds gathered speed as they moved up the coast from Sydney before swinging inland and touching down on the beachside suburb. The wind tore tiles from roofs and threw them like pebbles across lawns and roads. One house had 3 large aluminium shades torn from its wall bracket, hurled over the roof and into the front footpath, narrowly missing a neighbour running across the road. One homeowner says the roar of the wind gusts was deafening.
It's one big thud, like a big bomb just gone off and just straight through the wind then. It only lasted about 15 seconds.
As the storm moved inland, it touched down again and again. In Ray Street, roofs were again ripped from their joists, a garden shed was picked up and hurled 3 houses away. With the winds came centimetres of rain, flash flooding parks and streets. The flooding was worse in Wyong. The RSL club foyer became a small whirlpool. As water backed up from clogged drains, it poured into the club, filling the cellar and destroying hundreds of dockets and financial records. Nearby Wyong Primary School was calling on parents to take children home when classrooms flooded. While the flood provided plenty of enjoyment for students, classes for the rest of the year are in jeopardy due to the damage. As the floodwaters rose to cut the Pacific Highway, 2 people travelling in this Commodore had a lucky escape when they pulled to the side of the road, only to be caught up in the rushing water. With emergency services stretched to the limit, a second storm smashed into Buff Point, saving its full fury for a 2-storey house, reducing it to a top-storey shell and rubble. A 30-year-old man inside the house at the time was lucky to escape injury. A support beam speared through the floor while he rode the house to the ground. Tonight, County Council staff are trying to restore power. State Emergency Service personnel are patching roofs, and the Fire Brigade has called in extra units from Newcastle to help in the mopping up. Darren Curtis for NBN News.
This is the $6.6 million complex which won council backing last night. Owners of the Newcastle Falcons basketball team have put up the plans and intend using the stadium for matches. It will also be used by the Showground Trust for exhibitions, concerts and sports events. But there's still some problems to overcome before the plans become reality. First, Minister for Natural Resources Ian Causley has to give his approval, since the showground is on Crown land. Then the Roads and Traffic Authority must approve the council decision for access off Griffiths Road. Increased traffic flow and possible hazards are worrying local residents, but not the council.
I don't see them as being problems. There will be conditions that will have to be addressed by the Roads and Traffic Authority. It is against their policy, but this is a major facility that is not needed for the city, and we're not prepared to agree to that traffic going through the residential area.
Members of the Broadmeadow residents group who've opposed the development from the start say they are highly disappointed by last night's decision.
I think they accept that we've done the best we possibly can. Obviously they're not going to be satisfied because the facility is still there, and if it's on your doorstep or my doorstep we'd be worried too. But I think they're satisfied that council's done the very best they can.
Alderman McNaughton says council would like to see the centre up and running as quickly as possible. The Sellers Group hope to have it open by the start of next year's basketball season in April, and the Showground Trust see the complex as a way out of their money troubles. Rebecca Skinner for NBN News.
The aim of the training camp at Newcastle University is to give young athletes who already show natural talent that finishing touch to be a champion. Guided by champions in their own right, like sprinter David de Voyeren and long jumper Linda Garden, the young athletes can pick up the vital tips only learnt through experience.
Don't force it, just go as far as you can, okay?
In conjunction with the Hunter Academy of Sport, the Institute of Sport is promoting athletics drug-free, telling the students they can be the best without artificial stimulants.
I've got this, so if I can do it, I'm not big, I'm not any different from the kids out here, so there's no reason why they can't do it as well.
From the meeting today, an elite group of 20 athletes will be chosen for a Hunter development program. The program is designed to give on-tap advice for our future Olympians. Fiona McCarthy from Katara High and Brad Schrader from Warners Bay High may already be on that path. Today they were awarded 2 weeks free tuition at the Institute of Sport in Canberra.
This ominous brown scum is fast becoming a familiar sight to surfers at Newcastle beaches, with the latest report just 2 days ago at Dixon Park. Beachgoers feared raw sewage, however tests by the Hunter Water Board revealed an algal bloom. Questions are now being asked over how it got there. Marine biologist Dr John Laxton says such scenes could well be repeated in coming weeks. The cause, he says, is a huge algal bloom stretching along the New South Wales coast, a naturally occurring phenomenon typical of December seas and exacerbated by consistent onshore winds.
Now, if these winds persist for, say, a week at a time in one direction, all this algal material and the dying cells of these algae will be driven up on the beach, and this will give the appearance of a green or brown scum, depending on how fresh it is, and it will smell just like a compost heap.
It does look like a real thing when you see a brown stain on the beach. We've got to try and get across to people there is a marked difference between algae and pollution. Algae generally will not hurt you, pollution will.
Are there any concerns associated with this algae?
Not as far as humans are concerned. It's what I call the spring arriving in the sea, where new food is being provided for the organisms that live in it. It's a wonderful event as far as the sea is concerned.
The Hunter Water Board hopes tonight's public meeting will allay concerns that the algal blooms are linked to the ocean outfall. However, the board has discovered a new problem.
Since the outfall's been operating since April, we've had very clean beaches. We haven't had any accounts where we've gone out past SPC limits. Today, though, with the heavy rain over the last few days and the onshore winds have brought some grease onto shore, and that's the reason why we're going to secondary treatment in 2 years' time.
Barefoot water skier Debbie Pugh broke 2 world records and took out the Australian Masters title. Stephen Davies was selected to represent his country at the World Teams Championships and gaining other riding honours. Troy Waters for his courageous crack at the World Junior Lightweight crown. Nicky Wood continues his climb up the surfing world rankings, a great victory at Bondi. Chris Watson dominated the New South Wales Dirt Track Championships at Willow Tree Raceway in Ballina. And Greg Hayman has won the right to defend his 52-kilogram gold medal at the Commonwealth Games in Auckland.
Traffic banked up for about a kilometre on each side of the crest as police, rescue and ambulance officers worked to free the trapped man. The 18-year-old from Fennell Bay was a passenger in the delivery truck which allegedly jumped the median strip, glanced off an oncoming car and ploughed into a power pole. It took rescue workers about 40 minutes to prise the twisted metal away from the young man's leg. He was treated on the scene, then transported to Wallsend District Hospital. The 37-year-old truck driver, believed to be the victim's father, was unhurt. One lane of the Toronto Road remained closed to traffic until shortly after 10 o'clock. Police inquiries into the crash are continuing.
Duran and Witten were out to claim the vacant national title, and the Dora Creek boxer got the better of the early exchanges, but in the second, Witten bit the canvas from a Duran right hand. Witten bounced back in the third with a good combination, only to be floored towards the end of the round. Duran couldn't put Witten away as the Dora Creek fighter evaded a furious leather onslaught. In the fifth, it was Witten's turn to do some damage and wobble some knees. Witten again was on top in rounds 7 and 8 with super combinations, but Duran paid scant regard for such a belting, raising his arms in mock victory. And in the 9th, another floor facial for Witten. With the crowd right behind him, Witten finished the stronger of the two exhausted boxers, and with the crowd yelling local support, was confident of the decision.
And new Australian junior featherweight champion, Al Witten.
Al Witten has now announced that he wants a crack at the Australian bantamweight title, but after his swollen face has a bit of time to recover.
Waste-activated sludge is the byproduct of secondary treatment of sewage. Once the Burwood Beach secondary treatment plant is up and running, it will generate 3,000 tonnes of sludge each year. In the original plans, this was to be discharged through the ocean outfall. However, ocean disposal of sludge is now no longer acceptable to the State Pollution Control Commission. So the Hunter Water Board is considering its options. Today's board meeting heard that the simplest and cheapest disposal method is to discharge the sludge into the disused Newcastle colliery directly beneath the treatment works. Raw sludge would be piped into the mine, with displaced water from the flooded colliery returned to the plant for treatment. But the cheapest solution is not without problems. Mine disposal could prove politically sensitive following the recent uproar over toxic PCBs dumped in a South Coast mine.
In the South Coast they had disposal of toxic waste in mine. Our sludge is not toxic. It's biodegradable, and what we put down the mine will break down in a natural form.
Should mine disposal of the sludge be rejected, an alternate method has been endorsed by the board's engineers.
The other main option is much more expensive. It would involve stabilising the sludge by a digestion process and then dewatering it. And this product would be suitable for use, say, for making a compost for landscaping use or for rehabilitation works of devastated lands.
The Equestrian Centre has named the event the Night of Horses, and with more than 30 steeds among the chorus line, it's an apt title. It's a black tie occasion aimed at raising vitally needed funds to help send the Australian team to the World Championships in Stockholm. It will feature performances in all 5 Olympic disciplines from many of the riders on the short list for the Australian team. But to add a touch of glamour, several pieces will also be performed to music. One from the Centre's students and what is probably the piece de resistance, the Pas de Deux, a special choreographed piece performed by the Centre's principal riders Heath and Ros Ryan aboard their Grand Prix horses, the grey Stafford Sigismund and Sterling Wilton, a performance Heath Ryan admits you don't see every day.
It's 2 horses that move more or less together in an international way of going. It's fun to ride, it's fun to watch, it's quite fast and exciting for people who haven't seen it and aren't in horses, and it's really technically of a very high standard for those who are critics.